Hello, I'm Sabrina Carpenter here.
I'm Dasha.
Hey, I'm Billie Eilish.
What's up, guys? I'm Camila Cabello.
Hey, this is Tate McRae.
I love this station.
I love this station.
You're listening to Chasing Prophecy Radio, where we discuss anything and everything beyond the scope of normal. On the Oracle Talk Radio Network. Broadcasting live in Pittsburgh and Philadelphia.
If it's unexplainable, we're talking about it.
Whether you're a believer or a skeptic,
we cover everything where the unknown becomes the known.
And now, here are your hosts, Jenny Nicasio and Tom Callway.
Chasing Prophecy on the Oracle Talk Radio Network, broadcasting from Pittsburgh and Philadelphia, PA, where we discuss anything and everything beyond the scope of normal. I'm Jenny Nicasio, along with my co-host, Tom Callway. And tonight, Tom, like we said, we are diving into one of the most intriguing conspiracy theories out there. The alleged Osage underground base in New Mexico. And we'll explore different claims and secret government labs and genetic experiments and human alien collaborations beneath the, how do you say that? Archaeological Mexico Mesa, whatever. I'm not sure how you say that. How do you say that? You know who I'm talking about? No. Archuleta Mesa.
Oh, Archuleta.
Is that how you say it?
Yeah.
And we're going to talk to the fabulous, what are we talking
Jo
about?
Ann Fawcett.
And yes, we're talking
later.
to Jo Ann, and we're talking to, and my information is not coming up. And the Vogel, one of the Vogel brothers.
Tim. Yep.
Tim.
From the Cobble Mountain Critter Project. And we're going to talk to him first. So why don't you go ahead and tell me a little bit about him, Tom?
Absolutely. Well, you know, as Tim, we mentioned before we went on air, a mutual friend of ours, Sean Kelly, introduced us to both of you and said you'd be great. You know, you are great people. You'd be very interesting to have on our show. As you know, he's on UPRN. We're here on Oracle Talk Radio Network. So what better way to start off our network here in our first couple weeks than to have you on and talk about Bigfoot? And we're live right now across the world on the radio, iHeartRadio, TuneIn, Odyssey, you name it, we're there. So Alexa, smart speakers. So we're really enjoying you being on here. And one thing that we have for you, or for the people listening, is you know, you do Bigfoot research and investigations, and you and your brother are founders of the Cobble Mountain Critter Project. And you have some personal encounters and experiences with Bigfoot and investigative stories because you're a part of BFRO, you know, investigations. You have done those in your past as well. But one thing I want to start off with is you're in Western Massachusetts. Now, for the layman person, they hear of Bigfoot, they only think of the Pacific Northwest. What would you say to somebody who thinks Bigfoot's only in one area?
I would say I thought the same thing when I started out, you know, hearing about Bigfoot. It was a West Coast thing. And I was completely surprised when it showed up here. You know, it's just simple as that. You know, it wasn't a phenomenon out here. No one was talking about it. It wasn't a thing. It was clearly a West Coast thing. And it didn't really start out here until after you know, people started becoming a little more aware of it probably, and then you were able to talk about it a little more. Places showed up, you could make a report, stuff like that.
Very interesting. And why I appreciate that, what I like about that is when you talk about Western Massachusetts and it's immediately not the first place that comes to mind. No. Jenny's in a similar situation over in Chestnut Ridge out near Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. The reports of Bigfoot over the last 20, 30 years through the roof. Weird, you know, Appalachian creatures, you know, things like that. It's definitely opened more people's eyes. I mean, the world is getting smaller, obviously. You know, people are living in more rural areas, and everybody has a computer in their pocket.
Right.
What have you ever heard of anybody in the Western PA area talk about Bigfoot?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. There's Pennsylvania Bigfoot groups throughout the state. There's another guy down towards Virginia or Pennsylvania, Ohio, that area. He's got the Penn, Ohio Bigfoot, Bill Rigby down there. They have all got stories. Bigfoot's huge in Pennsylvania.
Do you have any compelling evidence in Massachusetts?
Compelling evidence?
Yeah, like do you have any footprints? Do you have any like fossils, anything like that? Because I know Pittsburgh, well, not Pittsburgh, but the Chestnut Ridge area.
Oh, look at that.
Stan Gordon has gotten so many sightings and
This one here's
Yeah.
a 17.5-inch track out of October.
there you go.
21st.
That's compelling.
Yeah,
Very
17.5-inch track. Those are the toes actually digging down, as a
Yeah, like stepping.
hill.
Yeah.
Actually it was the toes digging in, and you could see, how it's poured.
Yeah, that's a big foot.
Regular flat pour.
How big do you think
17.5
that
inches.
is?
17
that?
inches. Right?
17 inches. Wow, that's a big foot. You know what they say about
Yeah.
big feet.
Oh, Jenny. Here we go. Already off the rails. 8:06.
Sorry.
There we go.
Wow. So
So
that
yes,
was
there's
in Western
plenty of
Massachusetts?
Compelling information out there. There's plenty of eyewitness reports. There's tons of information. There's tons of what we would call empirical evidence that would prove this thing, but there's lots of people who talk about the body and DNA and this and that. And
Yeah.
inevitably, that's probably where it has to go. But I mean, realistically, there's tens of thousands of people that have seen this thing, and more that have had other types of situations where would not, other experiences, wood knocks, taps, whistles, things like that. Whoops, things.
That's amazing. Well, so what part of Massachusetts? Hello, Michael in the chat. Good evening. Like Massachusetts. Now, where in Massachusetts? Like,
We're located in the Berkshires, the western portion of the state, more near the New York line, Connecticut, kind of tucked in that lower corner.
no, is this more dense forest area?
It's your typical New England hardwood deciduous pine mixed forest. As you're looking up in New England and you see all the pretty red leaves and the orange leaves.
Yeah.
And, that's your typical foliage. We're just starting ish to get into that right now. It's fall, it's typical season for it. So yeah, we're deciduous, mostly, oak, maple, that kind of beech, hemlock, a lot of farmland.
Excellent. Do you so I know around the United States there might be different names for Bigfoot. You have, skunk ape and things like that. Is the local nomenclature, they call that Bigfoot up there? They call him Bigfoot?
Yeah, we called it Bigfoot.
Okay.
It goes back to the wild man. There's some dates.
The wild man. Never heard of
Yeah,
that.
it was a wild man, hairy man. There's a number of reports that go back to 1765 and up. Was the first report in Massachusetts, and that was located in, I believe it was Great Barrington. Farmers and a group of people had seen it down near a stream sleeping or something like that. They found it. They woke it up. They came across it. They did something to that effect back then, and it was written down in some transcript somewhere, some town, and so there's there's a recording of it regardless. So 1765.
Before this was even a country, before the Declaration of
1765.
Independence.
Well,
Yeah.
Tim, okay, now how, because Salem has a reputation for paranormal stuff. Do you think this is any correlation between Bigfoot and the witches and all the paranormal stuff in Massachusetts? Is there any, what do you think about that relationship? You never know. There's a lot of paranormal stuff that goes on there.
I totally agree. I've witnessed a number of weird things myself. So having said that, there's a lot of people that believe that Massachusetts, New England is sort of a hub for that kind of a paranormal activity, Bridgewater Triangle in particular. There's the Barrington Triangle. There's a number of different areas that maybe host a sensitive area, portals, people talk about things like that. It's way out of my league. I have no clue about that stuff. all I can really tell you is what happened to me, my brother, and friends while we were out, Bigfoot.
Well, give us tell us that. But Michael mentioned that there's an in the ancient books,
Mhm.
Lee Eckerson also made documentation notes in his journal about it. So go ahead and tell us your story real quick.
Well, yeah, our stories, we've got a number of them. First, we used to work with the BFRO. We don't work with BFRO.
Oh, okay.
We used to, as will a number of different groups that we've worked with along the way. Right now, we're working with a group called Boots on the Ground, and it's a Bigfoot field research organization. It's a place where you can call in, make reports, things like that. It's more centrally located up towards Boston, the Worcester area out that way. And that's the Boots on the Ground. There's a number of folks that are involved with that, a bunch of different states. Then they kind of host and they go off. If there's a report, those people go off and they'll check it out. That's the premise of the Boots on the Ground. So our report, it kind of goes back to 1976 when 1976 when something with big feet went to our backyard. That's kind of what caught our interest. And it was we had gone down to see a movie called Bigfoot: The Legend of Sasquatch, or Sasquatch. Of course. Yeah, it was that time. It was that time frame. It was November, December, and so we saw this movie, came back thinking, oh my God, to answer your question, is this an East Coast or a West thing? Well, it was a West Coast thing until we went and saw that movie, and the advertisements for it, we grew up in the woods, and hear you talking about this new creature in our woods that we go sleeping out, camping, and all this stuff. And you're telling me there's this thing out there? Come on. So it caught our interest, and off we go. We go to the movies, we come back. And, it was a few months later, and all of a sudden this thing is walking through our backyard, or had walked through our backyard and left tracks.
Wow.
Wow.
There was a big to-do. The news media, the police, everybody showed up.
Oh, really? It went that far?
Oh, yeah.
That's amazing.
Okay.
Yes, it was quite
It's on the news. Cool.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you can look in the newspapers there in Agawam, West Springfield, 1970.
We should have looked up the video and we would have played it.
Yeah.
So it turns out some kid had made a pair of plywood shoes. He had turned himself in a little while ago. He had went and seen the same movie that we had. Because how ironic, this thing's showing up in our backyard and you've never heard of it before.
That's funny.
So, yeah, we had no idea, though. We were 13, 14 years old. Who cares? Bigfoot was in our backyard. There were news crews, investigators. It was all, it was like, wow. It's like, what? Yeah. One of those things. So it was a very cool moment for a kid, a teenager. That kind of went by the wayside. We found out that this older teenager did it to pull a prank on the local neighborhood. Oh my God. And it got a little out of control. And by the time he could stop it, the news people and everybody was there. Then the kid didn't know how to stop it, so he just let it roll, and there it was, until so we went out for a while. Yeah. And then so many years after that, 2013, Eric and I have a business called Tacoma Mountain Outdoors. And it's an adventure education business, not far from what we're doing now with the Cobble Mountain Critter. And this is youth outdoor education. And it was the same thing back then. We were teaching people canoeing, kayaking, rock climbing, wilderness first aid, all the outdoor skills you need as a professional. And that's what the business was based on. And then we do a lot of educational other stuff like that. So we go off on these canoe trips, and we're in the Adirondacks in New York. It's 2013. We're going on vacation. We have spent our summer paddling in the Adirondacks. We're going in the fall. It's September, late September, this time of year, 2013, and we go into this little place called Pink Pond, and we're going to be camping on Long Pond. Yeah, Long Pond. And so we paddle in Portage, and we take a couple of days, a long way to get there. And paddle in Portage means you're paddling, and then you hike, you get out of your boat, and you carry your boat to the next lake, and the next lake, and the next lake. And so your parking lot is quite far away. There is no going home real quick. So we get out to Long Pond, set up camp, and we went out there midweek September because people would be back at school, back at work, colleges were back in, so the woods would be pretty
Yeah.
much empty. And that was our thought. And we were pretty right. There was pretty much no one in the parking lots at the trailheads all the way through, the St. Regis Wilderness Canoe
Mhm.
area. There's a lot of empty spots. Let's put it that way. Eric and I are out there. We got this one spot. We set up, now we're going to go fishing. And Eric and I are paddling. Actually, I'm paddling. He's fishing. And it becomes a fish story, literally, because every cast is now a fish. And he's doing a fly rod with a 5-weight line, if that makes any sense. And he's catching 3 and 5 pound smallies that are breaking the water and, just having a ball every single time. So a little fly rod, you're having a heck of a time. So after a while, you're not even thinking about fishing for food, is just catching fish. And we get to this little spot where it's a little confluence and it's a stream that goes up, and we start paddling up through this stream, and I start fishing. Eric's paddling, and the stream kind of gets a little braided and heads out and comes up to a beaver pond, a beaver dam, actually. It's about 30 feet, 40 feet in diameter, maybe. It's kind of like a half circle, and we'd be at the apex of it, so it'd be going back away from us. And it was about 4 feet high. It was about head level while we're sitting in a canoe fishing. So the top of the beaver dam, we're just about looking over it, and we're fishing above it now. And the stream from the beaver dam went back and tapered. It was probably only a couple of feet wide, maybe a few feet deep, and it went back into the woods. This is the St. Regis Wilderness Canoe area, and there's nothing out there. It's a wilderness stream in the middle of nowhere doing nothing but being a wilderness. There's nothing out there. And so here come these 2 guys, and all of a sudden I start fishing up on top of this beaver pond, and all hell breaks loose. I catch a fish. I start bringing in the fish, and then all of a sudden, these 2 trees start shaking like they're in a snow globe. The entire forest around us, the entire lake, everything is calm. These 2 trees, maybe 50 yards or so in front of us, are shaking like they're in a snow.
Wow.
Only 2 trees. A year later, we go back and we look at the same spot. Those trees that were shaking were 8 to 10 inches around. And it was about 7, almost 8 feet between centers of trees. So it was pretty far wide, pretty wide. And they were pretty, stout in diameter. So a large group of people wouldn't shake those trees. I'm telling you, these trees looked like they were in a snow globe, shaking like crazy. And that's no lie. That was kind of just freaking us out. We didn't know what that, how do you wrap your head around that? Everything around you is, other than catching fish, is quiet. And all of a sudden, these 2 trees start going off. And then moments later, this yelling, roaring, screaming starts in, and it is roaring. And, it's hard to explain the sounds that we were hearing. All I could tell you is roaring. It could have been multiple roars going in. The roaring and the tree shaking, it didn't stop for maybe 10, 15 minutes. We didn't have a watch. We didn't have a phone. We were fishing for dinner. We weren't really thinking about anything, So, we're just, all of a sudden this thing starts going off in the woods, and we're in the middle of nowhere, and these trees are shaking, and now this roaring's going on. And
was the trees moving because something was shaking them, or were they just moving?
I believe something was shaking them.
So it was actually the Bigfoot or whatever it was shaking.
I never saw it. Eric never saw the Bigfoot, but that's the only thing I can, as I go on, you'll see that there's, so with this thing, the trees are shaking. This roaring is coming from the same spot. And in the canoe, the roaring, like I said, this went on for maybe 10 minutes, 15 minutes. And before we decided to back out into the water, get away from this, it had progressively gotten louder and more aggressive to the point where Eric and I were thinking, we better get the heck out of here. So we started to back out through that braided water and got into the lake. Now we're almost 70 yards away, maybe 100 yards away. And it wasn't until that point, 10 minutes later, that thing actually stopped. It was quiet again. Nothing happening. Zero. Just like when we started fishing, just quiet. And that was it.
Wow. So, and you said 8 to 10 inches around, something has to have a significant amount of weight or force to make them shake in the manner that you're talking about.
Correct.
Do you think it was a territory thing? Do you think it knew you were there and, hey, this is my area?
Yeah, I do. Actually, we're kind of, while we were sitting out there, we were saying, what is making this sound? We never even thought, Bigfoot never even thought, never even crossed my mind. I really didn't. It just didn't. I thought it was maybe a couple of bears and a mountain lion going off. It was just a weird cacophony of noise. It was a weird, it was a lot of roaring that I've never heard before. Let's put it that way. And so as we're paddling back to our site, to our campsite, we're just a couple of 100 yards away on the same side of the pond as what just happened. So we're only a couple of 100 yards on the shoreline on the other way. So
just excuse me 1 second. If anybody has any questions, please put them in the chat, or you can call in the phone number here is 724-374-4619 if you have any questions. Okay, for Tim, right? Did I say that right?
Yep. Tim.
Okay, for Tim.
So we're sitting out in the lake, debating on what the heck this thing was. We have no clue. We're trying to wrap our head around it. We're kind of scared crapless because we don't know what happened. We backed out because the vibrations in our bodies felt like every tone that the thing was yelling, whether it was loud or low or high, you could feel like a tone value in the vibrations in your body. As it got louder, you could feel it heavier hit you. As it got lower or weaker, it was lesser in you. But you felt that all the way out to 100 yards, almost out to 100 yards, and then it finally stopped. And that's why we decided to move. Mm-hmm. And then as we were deciding to move, things were being thrown into the water. That was the other part of that. The yelling, the screaming, and the stuff that was coming into the water. That was very confusing because there's not many animals that
they can pick something up and throw it.
So to your to get back to your question, do you think it was territorial? We got back to our campsite that night and talked at length, and we just tried to stay up at night so we didn't have to go to sleep.
Yeah, no, I don't blame you.
But now we Monday morning quarterback that whole instance, and we believe we go right back to a similar. Why were we there? We were fishing. Mm-hmm. We were having a very successful fishing day. Why were they there? Well, they were there right there where we were, and they didn't get bothered until I pulled a fish out of that space. And then they started yelling. And so I'm thinking now that they were fishing. And, they see these two wingnuts come paddling up the creek, and here they are fishing, hooting and hollering. And all of a sudden I start catching fish in their little section. And I pull one up, and that's when the tree started shaking and whatnot. So going, to Monday morning quarterback that, I believe there were two of them potentially.
Okay.
I believe that they were fishing. I believe that they started way up the creek and were walking down the creek and pushing whatever fish and whatever might have been in the creek down into that fish trap, which is a beaver dam now, right?
Yeah.
And it's not very deep. It's probably 4 or 5 feet deep. And if these things are 8 or 9 feet tall, and the hands that some of the prints that I've seen, the casts of these hands are ginormous mitts, 15-inch, mitts, 20-inch mitts. Incredible. It's like, first baseman gloves, and you got
that's what I'm thinking.
Essentially 2 Bigfoots strolling up this narrow creek, pushing everything in its wake. And it's going to be a collect-all in that beaver pond. And then all they need to do is throw stuff up on the shoreline and go to town. And I mean, if that was me, that's what I would do. If I was survival fishing, less trout stuff, I'd have pushed stuff from that creek into that beaver dam and then blocked off the beaver dam, blocked off the stream, and held the fish in the beaver pond. So potentially, why were we there? Maybe the same reason. I think they were fishing. And I think that when we started catching fish, they just couldn't believe that these two things had the audacity to start fishing where they were. And they went off, and they let us know about it in no uncertain terms. There was absolutely no question in our minds that we needed to leave the area. We were not welcome until that noise stopped. And that noise never stopped. It went up and down in value, just sound-wise, but the trees didn't stop shaking, and the sound didn't stop for 10, 15 minutes. Anyway, that was that encounter. We got up the next morning, got the heck out of there, and that was the extent of that. But there's a lot of reports in New York.
A ton of reports, and it's growing every year. I think my soapbox here. I think this stigma is going away a little bit, so people are more likely in this day and age to report something that they've seen, rather than maybe years before. So you have the territorial aspect of it, the survival fishing, which you're right, it sounds exactly like what it was doing, moving it in there. That shows me a ton of intelligence to use its size, use a barrier, and to gain the nutrients. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I have to think these things are pretty intelligent, right?
I would agree. They're certainly the reigning champions in hide and seek.
That's true.
There's that. But I tried not to humanize the Bigfoot in any way, shape, or form. I tried to keep it 100% in the animal world. Okay. And so having said that, what I mean by that is, gorillas and chimpanzees and monkeys will use sticks and use sticks to go into a termite mound and pull out termites and use it as a tool. So there's other creatures, other animals out there that will create and develop tools to feed itself or to attain food or something to that effect. Find shortcuts up the tree or something like that. They're smart enough to figure it out. And if it can be done once in the animal world, then it can be done twice or three times. And I would absolutely say a Bigfoot could mimic it or do something similar to it, to find its source and mimic a behavior or something like that. So why not?
Hey, Tim, did anybody get a glimpse of Bigfoot?
Yes.
And what did they say it looked like?
Well, the very last guy I talked to, his name is Ernie Davro. He had a sighting on Drake Mountain in Granville, Massachusetts, which is just the other side of Cobble Mountain Reservoir here. Okay. And he calls them a people.
What does he call them?
He was with it, a people. He calls them a people.
People.
A people, like
people.
A tribe of people, a people.
Okay, like a tribe. Okay.
Yeah. They're just a little different than us. Big, bulky, hairy, Bigfooty looking things.
Just kind of hairy people.
His encounter was incredible. It was very close. He saw it for a sustained period of time. It did sign language, mimicking a beat. Ernie had it in its shotgun in his sights. He had a 12 gauge.
Oh, wow. He was going to
turn around and basically did one of these deals. And that's if you've seen this and I did this to you, what would you recognize it as?
Yeah.
Well, that's true.
We would do, right?
Movement, like understanding what you're about to do.
Exactly. So in some fashion, in the slightest, simplest form, there was potentially communication between Ernie and that Bigfoot with that simple hand gesture. And he was 40 yards away at this point. I don't really want to tell Ernie's story, but it's an incredible, incredible thing. He saw whistle, he actually, saw him put his hands up, put the hands up and do the whistle, the whoops. There was chatter, there was talk. He's got an incredible story. Having said that, he'll be speaking at our festival at, the Cobble Mountain Critter Festival, June 7th. So that's why he's here.
What's that festival about?
The festival?
Yeah, what is that?
The Cobble Mountain Critter Festival is it's a fundraiser for youth outdoor education. It's what the Cobble Mountain Critter does. It's the project portion of our business, the Cobble Mountain Critter Project. It's a fundraiser business. We do 5K, doing 5K fundraisers, things like that. That money raised goes into, camper ships, sending kids to camp in a variety of different organizations. It could be getting skates for kids that, at the Shriners Hospital that need to go out and go out skating. It could be ice time rentals for out groups. It's for getting kids outdoors, things like that. Maybe some professional certifications, wilderness EMT, WUFA, things like that. That's how the Critter's going to be interactive with the community. They come out, they support the runs, the festival, with sponsors. We got Wojo, we got Leisure Time Canvas out of West Springfield. They're legendary sponsors, and it's a lot of money that they put in, and it's appreciated because it's going to go right into sending kids to camp and stuff like that. So
it sounds like a wonderful project that you have, and certainly needed to get kids outdoors and all of that. Teaching necessary survival skills and getting them away from the phone, right? That's another excellent point.
And once you get to the festival, there's all kinds of speakers. We've got tons and tons of speakers. We're going to have Gene Tewksbury there talking mountain lions and the ghost cats from the Northeast. And we've got Mike Trainer. He's coming up from Rhode Island. He's going to be talking about the Bridgewater Triangle and Bigfoot in the Rhode Island, in that little state. We got Richie Banter, Richie Baralt and Steve Wojo. Those guys are going to be podcasting live right there.
That's awesome.
Dave McCullough, Andy, Alex Penikoff. There's Mike Young out of New York or Connecticut. There's a bunch of Bigfooters, paranormal. Matt Moniz, he's coming out. He'll be doing UFO stuff. So there's a pretty eclectic group for a pretty.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
Festival. And it's held right here at a camp. It's 1,300 acres where I'm a ranger, and it's right here on the property. So there's plenty of room for vendors and stuff like that.
Well, Tim, where can people learn more about your organization and your Bigfoot investigation page or website?
Sure. Generally, it's Eric and I. We're the Vogel brothers. We have a Vogel brothers page. Eric's off tonight. But if you go to Facebook, there's a Vogel brothers page. And thank you, Sean Kelly, for making this connection.
Yeah, definitely.
And we'll have to get back with Eric. Then there's the Cobble Mountain Critter Project page, which is our business page. It tells you what we're doing as a business, fundraiser, stuff like that. And then there's the Cobble Mountain Critter Festival page. And that's where you're going to find information about coming out to the festival, the speakers, sponsors, spotlights, highlights, things like that. So Cobble Mountain Critter Festival, that'll be June 7th, 2025.
Well, thank you so much for coming on tonight. We really appreciate it. And we learned a little bit about the Bigfoots from Massachusetts. But thank you so much.
You got it.
Thank you, Tim.
Thank you. Have a good night.
And you too. Okay, that was great. It was a great segment. And before we move on, I just want to let everybody know that we are broadcasting on many different platforms, including iHeartRadio and OracleTalkRadioNetwork.com. And
don't go anywhere. We have our next guest of the night, and she's somebody that I had on Beyond the Radar, and it was a gangbuster episode. It was my first episode ever for Beyond the Radar, so she'll always have a special place in my heart. And I couldn't have started with a better one on UFO topics, and just everything Jo Ann said blew my mind about everything. And I'm just so excited that we got her on here.
I got some things to ask her. Yeah, she's a knowledgeable person on the topic of UFOs and government cover-ups. She's going to shed some light on some of these mysteries surrounding.
Without further ado,
some of the stuff. Yeah.
Hi, Jo Ann. How are you?
Hi. I'm well. How are you?
I'm doing very well, thank you. I love that blanket back there. Very nice. And thank you so much for coming on and being a friend of our shows, but mine, and then this one I did with Jenny. You have quite the knowledge and experience. I often myself have listened to our episode, when I had some downtime just to listen, and because you really came across as a subject matter expert in the world of UFOs, government, between you and your husband, and some of the things he was working on. So this has been a long time coming for me, wanting to get you on here. And now here we are on Chasing Prophecy on Live 365 around the world. Listen on TuneIn, Odyssey, iHeartRadio, or your smart speaker. So everyone can hold this and or listen to this part and segment of our show. Of course, we're streaming everywhere to all of our platforms. But Jo Ann, I have to start with there's one thing that stuck out to me, and this is why I reconnected and wanted to get you back on and started that whole conversation again.
Sure.
I take a lot of what everything that you said with you've been there, you come from a place of knowledge. I had somebody, or we did actually on this show, have somebody come on and sort of was a reptilian apologist, if that makes sense. They were saying that reptilians were misunderstood and it's us who are converting or us who are interpreting them as evil when they're not. I immediately went back to all of the stuff we talked about, that segment that we had just on reptilians. So can you please clear the air about them being not so nice?
Sure. And what I always say, and nice to meet you, Jenny.
Yeah, nice to meet you too.
Thank you. What I always say is there's several reptilian species. Some are friendly, some are not. So I will never be the person that says all reptilians are evil.
Okay.
I do not believe they are demonic. I believe some of them really hate us and want to take over, and they're not our allies. There are other species that are very friendly, and there's one that I talk about a lot that's, an ally to many militaries, but at least to the U.S. military, and it has been since the early 50s. So.
Wow.
Yeah. And I have a video. I'm just we're gonna do with this video is we're just gonna play bits and pieces of it, and then you will discuss it, because I know you probably seen this video before.
I don't know.
I watched it a number of times, but this guy is he's spot on and he nails it, because it goes back to the one whistleblower, and I think you know.
By the name of Paul Benowitz. Benowitz, who worked for a company called the Thunder Corporation, began in his investigations to be harassed by government agents, but also he began to get very unusual readouts on his computer. And Benowitz actually claims that he was in contact with some form of alien intelligence that was coming to him from a computer that claimed to be based inside the Dulce Archuleta Mesa. Benowitz had flown over the mesa and actually came up with a map of the various entrances for where the saucers could come and go from out of the mesa. Now, subsequent investigators have found two engineers who claim to have actually built the place in 1953. We interviewed 14 eyewitnesses who claimed that they, when under hypnosis, these were women. A number of the women had little children as well, who were also abducted along with them.
I wanted to ask you this. I don't know if you ever heard of Sherry Hinkle. She supposedly was there, and she has the Dulce papers. And have you ever heard of that before? And what are your thoughts on it? Because it's crazy.
The name sounds familiar, but I can't tell. I don't know who that it really is. And who was the guy in the video?
What's his name? He's the Air Force, or he's the
By the name of Paul. By the name of Paul.
Oh, Paul.
Oh wow, this is
By the name of Paul Benowitz. Benowitz, who worked for a company called the Thunder Corporation, began in his investigations to be harassed by government agents, but also he began to get very unusual readouts on his computer. And Benowitz actually claims that he was in contact with some form of alien.
you can't fast forward on that.
No, it didn't look like that. Paul Benowitz, does that name sound familiar?
Yeah, that does. And that's in probably the report that I have. But
you have a report.
I have a report that Mark, I don't know who wrote it. He was asked to help edit it as like a team of people that edited it. And it went to the Joint Chiefs of Staff in like December of 2001. So,
wow.
And I don't know if this isn't really important, relevant, but he and I are no longer married, so I'll be referring to him as my ex, perhaps.
No problem.
Yeah, but no big deal. And then, but the Dulce papers is like, so I don't know what she was talking about. I know, there were things gathered by Phil Schneider, I think, and other
Yeah,
people.
Phil Schneider is the one that went missing. They think that
Right.
so he was a
Right.
whistleblower.
Right. And so what I sell through my former nonprofit is still a report that went to the Joint Chiefs of Staff that somehow I have a copy of whatever. I have a copy of it. So yeah, it's pretty amazing and pretty awful. And, it's not something that we like to talk about, but oh, well, it happened and it's really sad.
Wow.
Yeah, it is sad.
Now, what I would love to say is I've been to the town of Dulce twice to speak at conferences that they used to have. And it is so delightful. Well, it's really kind of cool to like be at the base of that mesa and think, whoa, this is, kind of strange. But it's also really wonderful to be in the presence of the Apache reservation, the tribe that the group, the people that live there, and who will sit and tell you their Bigfoot stories. And also, oh, we sit in our front yard and see the UFOs flying in and out of there every night. It's like, cool. Now, I never was part of the field trip. They would take people up in Jeeps and stuff, and it's a really awful road to get up there. So I never went up there. I was perfectly fine to stay down at the bottom in the hotel. But, it was really a special experience to be there.
I'm going to play a couple more videos. I'm not going to be able to go fast forward. I had pictures too, but I can't show them. You have to have them in the present. You can't just load them up. I thought I could just load them up. But there's the one that actually, let me just see if I wish this on, I wonder why I can't, because I want.
By the name of Paul Benowitz. Benowitz, who worked for a company called the Thunder Corporation, began in his investigations to be harassed by government agents, but also he began to get very unusual readouts on his computer. And Benowitz actually claims that he was in contact with some form of alien intelligence that was coming to him from a computer that claimed to be based inside the Dulce Archuleta Mesa. Benowitz had flown over the mesa and actually came up with a map of the various entrances for where the saucers could come and go from out of the mesa. Now, subsequent investigators have found 2 engineers who claim to have actually built the place in 1953. We interviewed 14 eyewitnesses who claimed that they went under hypnosis. These were women. A number of the women had little children as well who were also abducted along with them. But in this investigation, these 14 eyewitnesses who claimed to have been abducted claimed to have actually been inside the mesa. There's also a sort of legendary figure, a fellow who is called Thomas C. This fellow Thomas C. supposedly worked as a security guard inside the base and escaped in the late 1970s with a videotape that was 6 minutes of a security camera that basically ran back and forth over a large hall in which there were these ambionic sacks where there appeared to be actual aliens in the sacks and unusual devices on the walls. So the explanation behind this is that in 1953, supposedly some sort of deal was struck between the United States government and this particular group of aliens. We don't know which bunch. Supposedly they're from Zeta Reticuli. And that in 53 we allowed them to have certain underground bases in which they could do certain types of genetic experimentation and energy experimentation in league with the U.S. military. And that in 19...
So that's what you were saying. I don't know. What do you think? Do you think okay, some people think it's still open?
Oh, okay. Well, and I would like to say too that from the information that Mark used to give me and that what's in that report too, is like there were several species. Lots of species were there, went in and out. Maybe there was like a core group of species that actually worked there. I think he said it was kind of managed by the Greys. And yeah, they were doing all kinds of experiments, genetic, breeding, all kinds of weird things and awful things. And what was your other question?
I wanted to know, they said that the reason what happened was with the firefight was because the aliens refused to stop what they were doing or something. They
Right.
wanted
Well,
to
and
continue it.
actually, they started building that, I think, in the late 40s. It probably took quite a while. And, and we allowed them, yes, the
Yeah.
guy's absolutely right. We allowed them to build a base there. We've allowed many bases to be built. And we actually had, government officials would go there and participate in orgies and all kinds of weird
Yeah.
stuff. And so there was a faction of the government and the civilian elite, that liked what was going on or was okay with what was going on. And then you had certain people in the military, like Mark and his dad and other people who, once they found out what all that was going on and how horrible it was, they felt like they needed to do something and to help rescue as many victims as they could. So that's the firefight. It was a rescue mission. They went in through like 3 or 4. Some of them went in through. Well, Mark's team followed an UFO that was going in because he said that the entrances were actually covered by holograms, so that you could probably it was like a desert, and then it would they'd open the door or whatever. And so they followed a UFO that was going in. There were other people that went in through like the train tunnels, they have those, bullet train tunnel thingies. And then also like ventilation shafts and stuff. So different teams went in
it was
different
Delta
ways.
Force.
Well, it was Delta Force and it was NSA people and it was, military. So it was like several different kinds of personnel that went in there. And I know Mark's dad was one of the organizers, and several key military leaders were. Mark was just in charge of one little team, but he said it was horrible. They went in and they were only in and out in less than an hour, or just under an hour, right about an hour.
How many people they said were killed? Like 179 or something like that.
No, I think the historical number is like 66.
Oh, 66.
I think that was it. And then, they blew up a major part. So it did stop operations for quite a while. They rescued about 3,000 people, but they had to leave a lot of victims there. And some were so far gone because of the experiments that it was just no offense, but it was better off to leave them there and let them die. Because they wouldn't have been able to integrate back into society.
They said they were so messed up. I mean, some of these people.
Oh, yeah.
And I have some pictures. I'm going to try to pull them up off her site because she claims that she was there. And
the Sherry Hinkle?
Yeah, she was there. She was one of the abductees.
I don't know. I'm not saying she's not, of course, because I don't know all the names. I've only heard of one name. I thought Krista somebody. Krista, I think was her name. But it might have been sure.
While Jenny pulls that up, we have a question in the chat here from Nicole Gaspard. Have you heard of alien implants and how can they be detected?
I have heard of them, but because there's certain speakers at conferences that talk about them and have had experiences like removing them. So, and I think there's a couple of guys at the different conferences, and I haven't been to a lot of conferences lately, but COVID kind of slowed everything down, and so now we're just kind of getting back to it. But there's a couple different guys that have the ability, I think, to detect them. One is Stephen somebody, and I forget his last name. And there's also, I think, Daryl Sanders. Daryl somebody. I think he also had the ability to detect some implants. And then there was a scientist. Oh my gosh, I'm terrible. There was an older guy who has passed, but I think he could do that too. And he removed them. So if I could remember the name, you'd all know who it is. So.
It isn't Stephen Greer, is it?
No. No. He's way older than Stephen Greer.
Oh, gotcha. This is one of the drawings that she did, that were these they created these hybrids.
Yeah, I know there was a lot of experimentation with hybrid creatures. And you have to remember, it's like one of the things I've said over the years is many aliens have lost their own ability to reproduce naturally, either by, probably environmental factors on their home world. So a lot of them have taken to, using maybe either creating hybrids or also, but especially like using human females just as a substitute womb.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, which
That's
that
crazy.
doesn't sound
Is
like
that
any
our
fun.
value to them?
Pardon me?
Is that our value to
Yeah,
somebody?
food and reproduction, pretty much.
Yeah. Here you go. So that's
Oh,
very
wow.
tiny, right? Or is that supposed to
Wow.
be a big hand?
Wait,
Oh, look at the
can you
baby.
even see that? I can't
Yeah.
see it.
Yeah. It
Okay.
looks like,
She
yeah.
said there was 3 they had 3 fingers. They're not human. Their coloring was like real thin skin, about 6 inches. Yeah, it's small.
Very small.
Wow.
That's a baby.
It's a long way to
Was
grow.
that supposed to be
too.
like a full term baby?
I don't know.
Oh, wow.
It just says that it's a 3 fingers, 2 not human, coloring
That's her
thin
recreation
skin,
of what
about
she
6
saw
inches.
in
Yeah.
there. Somebody holding one, and it
Yeah.
was that small type of thing.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah,
So,
it's-
Joanne, we got to the food part a little bit on Beyond the Radar, and I just want to bring it back up because that was a real fascinating part.
I shouldn't laugh.
No, but it is fascinating. Some species
We're delicious.
were delicious.
Yes.
Does the government know about this, or do they provide us for them?
Both, in my opinion. Oh, she's lovely. The government, different governments have different treaties. And, I'm kind of out of the loop now that Mark and I are divorced. So I don't really know totally what's going on these days. But, it used to be, especially like in the 70s and 80s and 60s, even it's like different governments would make treaties. It's like, and set quotas like, we'll let you kidnap this many people for this much technology. And maybe it wasn't always to be eaten, but they're taking you out either to be sex slaves or food or a substitute womb, and then, but yeah, I mean it's pretty well known. It's like I have a quote, and I tried to find it, I can never find it in time, but I have this lovely quote about. It's mostly about communication, because obviously most alien species don't speak English and they don't care to, and they think we're just little rodents. But it's about, imagine if you're, you're around different non-human species and they can't talk to you and they're just having you line up because you're going to be lunch. But you don't know that yet. Maybe you think they're going to serve you lunch. Well, no, you're going to be their lunch. And how about other species who come here and they're horrified that we're eating like salad and lettuce because maybe they're a vegetable type. I don't know. But it's like they're just horrified at some of the things that we do. And some of them, there's hundreds of species. And most of them are all more sentient than we are because they're older. Their civilizations are way older than we are. Yeah. So it's like I have great, they're not all friendly toward us, but I have great respect for them because they're just another species like we are in this vast universe.
Well, thank you.
And this picture shows a female hybrid that worked there.
Oh, wow. Well, she's actually lovely.
Yeah.
She looks quite lovely. And, I have friends in the UFO community who have had, they've had abduction experiences, and they know that they're mothers to hybrid children. So,
well, I've heard of that too. I've heard of some people who have said that knew that they had hybrid children, and a couple have even met them. I've listened to listener stories on other shows, other podcasts, and that's something that was like that. So this Jenny is supposed to be a
this
warrior?
is one of the this is their genetic
interesting. That's like what, 6 feet?
Freak experiments that they did. It looks like it has a human man's face
with a lot of hair, and then like 8 legs. Oh my gosh!
It's supposed to be 9 feet tall.
They said it's 9 feet tall with the mentality of a 4-year-old child.
Oh wow!
Well, that's where you're going to end up being lunch for.
Yeah.
That's,
Well, and there
Yeah.
are many species that are just huge. There's some that are tiny because they're like little insects, but there's some that are huge. So there's so many out there.
If just to throw out a number that you know of, what's the tallest one that you've heard of?
9 feet is like the tallest that Mark
Okay.
has ever described. So I'm sure there could be taller ones, but most of the tall ones that he's talked to me about are like 9 feet. There's some cats, the raptors, if they stand up full height, if they stand up, I mean, they're used to running, so they don't look very tall, but if they stand up, they can be 7 to 9 feet tall. And I said cats. And there's like this beetle species that their size depends on their class. If you're just a drone worker, you might be just the size of a VW bug. And if you're a warrior, you might be the size of a pickup truck. And if you're the queen or, princess,
Okay.
you'll be like a semi truck. So
and this picture is when they came in and for the firefight and they were destroying the things that they wanted to destroy when they found, what you were talking about. And there's, looks like a hybrid. And there's the military are trying to destroy it.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I don't, obviously I don't know the detail of that or anything like that, but nothing surprises me. And I don't know, because the report I have a copy of, they edited out lots of pages that even the Joint Chiefs of Staff didn't get to see. So.
Oh, wow.
And the report I have is over 100 pages. So it has enough detail. It's got the history and it talks about Phil Schneider and a bunch of researchers. And because, one of the reasons why they were getting concerned too, is like all these researchers were finding out about this place and, sharing information. So, but then they, were finding out how bad it had gotten. And the elite people were not happy that the military went in there to stop things.
No, they're just not. They like that stuff.
Well, there was probably a lot of investment in that too. You have, the financial side of it. Probably a lot of money in that. You were talking about species, Jo Ann. Are you familiar with the work of Craig Campobasso?
I think so. The name sounds very familiar. He did a book about lots of different species. Okay, cool. Yes, I have. Thank you. I was going to get it, and it's like Mark had compiled a bunch of information, so I had a box that we were going to do something similar. So I'm glad this guy beat me. He beat me to it because I never got it done doing it.
You can pick up on this if you want, because he was only able to publish, I believe, 120 species, and he said, I know there are well more than that, but he was condensed to a book size and picked, I guess, his top 120. I don't know exactly what it was, but you have the main ones. You have the Greys, Zeta Reticuli, Reptilians, Palladians, Mantids. You have the big name ones.
Right.
But like you were saying, cats, beetles, different, the raptors. They don't have, he doesn't have or anything really on that. So it would definitely be something. But this is one of the things that I've had this book. I've read it front to back 4 or 5 times, right? Just because every time I read it, I pick up on something else. When you were talking about these different things, I wanted to ask you, before, but now I, have the chance to, about his work, because how you describe these species are what he says about these species too.
Oh, cool.
So, I just, for you two not really knowing each other and having the same story about these different species, he broke it down more like it's an almanac. So it's like, here's what they believe, the cosmic rule of one. Here's what, here's what their height is. Here's what, they believe in. And, it talks about a little bit of the factions, Orion versus Sirius. Is there a battle between those two, or is it?
I know there was a battle between like Dracos and Raptors.
Yes. A light and dark, right?
Well, the Raptors are our allies, and they look like velociraptors in, Jurassic World.
Okay.
So I love them. We love them.
So,
yeah.
How about you answering this person. They think it's sci-fi stuff. It's not.
No,
That's the
no.
thing. It's not
It's not.
sci-fi.
No,
Yeah.
and here's the fun fact is that a lot of sci-fi writers and the movies based stuff on what what the aliens shared, what the military shared with them, because the
Yeah.
military, wanted to see how the public could react. So, they fed information to I was gonna say, who's the Star Trek guy? The Gene Roddenberry guy, and probably, probably other big filmmakers. And Howard Hughes had seen stuff, and even P.K. Dick, the science fiction author, he saw some weird stuff.
Yeah, and the X-Files was based on what they got from the government. So there's like all those different. There's how many did we say there were, Tom? There's like 16 episodes that are actually
there was 16
real.
episodes that were based on the
cool.
a real report. Obviously dramatized for Fox for television, mainstream television, and that was like basic cable, so it wasn't like an HBO, if you remember, X-Files. But the initial meat and bones, or the meat and potatoes of those stories, of those 16, came from real life reports. And when you look up the real life reports, they're way stranger than the episode even led on to.
Well, and my feeling is, I have had personal UFO sightings. And my opinion is, well, who's flying them? Some of them were drones, because I was told they were, but some of them were not. And it's like, somebody's got to be flying them. Somebody gets them here.
Yeah, and I saw them in my own backyard. I seen them.
Yeah, and it's amazing. And what's fascinating, because I'm fascinated with like the sociology and the cultural stuff around this, not just, I've broadened my horizons beyond the military stuff, but, they have culture and they have societies and they have families, and some of them are educated and some of them are very spiritual. And some of them do, most of them don't want us ever out in space, but some of them are very, I guess you could say, enlightened, but it's like some of them would like us to step up and really be part of their community.
Yeah.
And maybe Tommy, you and I talked to that before, but I've taken it, my message has taken it to a much more spiritual level and wanting to embrace, everybody and be part of a community. Obviously, I probably don't want to have tea with the Dracos because they don't like us, but I would sit down with the Raptors and have tea. They're really cool. And so are the cats, and there's dogs that are really cool. So,
Yeah. The one point, especially between Craig and you, I believe we talked about was, the hybridization that was going on. The Greys, apparently they messed their lineage up so far that they can't reproduce, right?
I don't know much about the Greys. I know there's several species of them. Some work with our governments and some work with, other alien species kind of as a go-between and do the deal making and do, organize the kidnapping and stuff like that. They're a very sterile being. So that's why they can be that go-between. That's why they can be the translator between different species.
So we could touch them, we could interact with them and not.
Right. And they probably wouldn't get sick from our germs. Aliens are very worried about our germs, and we should probably be worried about their germs, but they're very worried about our germs because, and like when COVID hit, a lot of the ones that were here on the planet left because they didn't want to get sick.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
That's fascinating. Yeah. That is absolutely fascinating.
There's nothing worse than a raptor with a really runny nose. So.
No, anything that looks like a raptor, I don't want it to be upset near me.
No, I don't want to.
But they're so cute. They're so cute.
Sure they are.
I love the Jurassic World movies. And it's like, and I just think I call them people because to me they're just other sentient beings, and I would love. It's like they're great. They're very family oriented. They're very good disciplinarians, but they believe in education. The Raptors believe in art and lovely things. And, they'll put on like 8-hour operas and stuff about their heroes and history and things like that. But, their babies are so cute. I mean, they can chomp on you the minute they're born, but they're very cute.
Let me hit you with a rapid fire here, okay?
Uh-oh.
I'm
Okay.
gonna rapid fire you with a question, and you tell me the first species that come to mind when I say it. Okay?
Okay.
Nicest to humans.
Well, I'd say the dogs and the cats and the raptors.
Okay. Meanest
For
to
sure.
humans.
Meanest? Oh, the reptoids and the Dracos hate us.
From the ones you know that from the furthest away, like the furthest from Earth ones.
Oh, I don't know. I don't
Okay,
know.
closest
I
to
don't know
Earth ones.
distance. Well, there's ones that have a base here. You know, there's several species have bases on the Earth. So I'd say the closest ones would be in Australia and South Africa.
Wow. Okay.
There are bases there, and there's base in British Columbia.
There you go.
Okay. And now, last one. Weirdest fact about any of them.
Weirdest fact. Oh well, one of the things that Mark learned as a child was usually the ones that are the scariest looking are the friendliest.
Oh wow.
And he didn't elaborate on which species he meant, but you know, he was at one of the interstellar conferences when he was a kid, so he got to see all kinds of species coming into the opening ceremonies and stuff. So he had quite an education.
Well, thank you for that little exercise.
Yeah, you're welcome.
That was fun for me.
We don't have time for the latest sightings.
Want to do it real quick?
Yeah, let me see. They're short.
Yeah,
These are
it's
what
40
was on
seconds.
TikTok. Okay.
Faithfulness. There's another power up. My neighbor James is witnessing this. I just glanced up. There it is, powering up again. I just noticed a star that immediately went lights out, and it's stationed just over the townhouse. There's the power up again. Thank you. That's the regular visiting triangle. September 17th, 2024. I'm back here with my neighbors. There's the power up again. Faithfulness. There's another power up. My neighbor James is witnessing this. I just glanced up. There it is, powering up again. I just noticed a star that immediately went lights out, and it's stationed just over the townhouse. There's the power up again. Thank you. That's the regular faithfulness. There's another power.
Changing.
Yeah, I've seen that kind of thing at least twice.
That was a triangle that was seen in Florida. But I personally think it's a CGI or it could be a drone. But
Yeah, definitely. So with the pulsating ones, do different species have different types of ships?
I believe so, because some have triangular ones, some have, you know, the typical round one. And Mark had done some drawings about ones he'd seen. The raptors have different kinds, and there was another species, and I don't remember which one it was, but there's one that looked like a big green bug. So yeah, I would be of the opinion that different species have different craft. Yeah. And then you have to remember there's some under the water, and you know, they have craft too. So
Yeah, those ones are very interesting to me, how they displace the water and travel through there. Always have been fascinated about that one. All right. So, Jo Ann, what are you up to lately? What do you got? What are you working on?
Well, besides my bookkeeping business,
yes.
And I can't remember. I'm sorry, I can't remember when we last talked, but I've now published my second book. I'm working on my third book. I'm going to be speaking at a UFO mini conference in Petaluma, California, the second weekend of October. So that's coming up. So that'll be fun. It's tying, you know, it's tying aliens and magic and fairy realm all together. Because like I said, I believe we're all connected in this wonderful galactic community. So that's what I'm going to be speaking on. It's called UFO Mini Con. I think tickets are on sale. They're only having like 65 people. It's just a small one, but it's a fundraiser for the bigger one that she has near San Francisco, like next year.
Okay.
So,
Well,
Yeah.
there you go, Nicole. Nicole's in California. Go to Petaluma.
Where are you?
She is, I forget the name, but I know she's Southern California.
Okay.
And not on the coast. So, yeah, make it out there, see Jo Ann and talk, because Nicole definitely has some crazy stories about UFOs and being able to channel and connect with them that way. So, yeah, she's actually also a host on the Oracle Talk Radio Network on Wednesdays at 9:00. There you go, Nicole.
Nice.
Yeah. So thank you so much for your time, your
Oh, you're
energy,
welcome.
being here.
thank you for
Please
coming on.
be a friend of the show. Whenever you have some time, shoot us a
Sure.
message, hop on, and we'd love to keep in touch with anything new that comes your way.
Great. Thanks for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. You have a good one.
Welcome. Yes.
You're welcome, Nicole.
That was fun.
Absolutely. Had a great time. Always a good time with Jo Ann and her knowledge is second to none. I have not come across anyone else who has that level of knowledge and experiences. So always
I'd like to hear more about her husband's, what he did, and what he's I think Dulce is the most frighteningest place, and I have it in my third book. There's
I'm
more
so
things
glad
that
you
they've
did.
done.
You put it in your book.
There's so much more things. They have these vapor guns. Then they have the Hall of Souls. They take the souls out of people, and they're
Really?
stored. Yeah, it's. I got all of my information from Sherry, and she has the papers that were published. And I don't know if you might be able to still see them if you put them into Google to actually look at them. And I put it in a fictional site. I put it all into the storyline, and it's the most frighteningest place. And she kind of she wasn't angry at me, but she said, "I don't think this is the material for young adult." I said, "Well, you used to hear some of the stuff that they read." So yeah, it's frightening that the government let them do that. It's terrifying that they did that. And I do believe that they did do exactly what she said, what Jo Ann said. We'll do this for you if you do that for us. And it got out of hand.
Yeah.
And then they saw what they were doing. And I think a lot of the people who were supposedly abducted were taken there. And that's my theory on people that they think they're going into space.
Yeah.
They're not. They're going down to these underground bases, and there's so many that are still here, Tom. There's so many they're still using. They're using all these underground tunnels, and they're doing sick things. And I think a lot of this, when she said it's the elite, like the Rothschilds, and I think Epstein's Island, and now we have Sean Diddy, I think they're all connected. And there was a lot of people talking about how I believe they're probably clones, because if you see the celebrities that all look,
I see something like that too.
Yeah. And the dark eyes, and there's some people that have the black eyes. I mean, there's no light in their eyes. It's just black, and it's terrible, and it's frightening. And I don't know. I think it's all connected back to these experiments they've done on people. It's terrifying. But
in a typical computer, when you clone, right? You clone a program, a disk. It's not as functionally secure or as good as the layman term, as good as the original. And now if you clone a clone, you're degrading even more. And then you clone the clone. You know what I mean? So maybe it does work that way. Maybe it does work that way that, if you get so many levels back, it can't even be interpreted as human because it's so far off of what the original DNA was.
Yeah, it's just. Well, I want to tell people, if you're really interested in this.
Good to see you, Jo.
Hi, Jo. I haven't seen you very much lately, Jo. You really make my sad. You have to come on and watch us.
What's going on? You can't make Jen sad.
What's going on? You're giving me a complex. But if you really want to know about, I'm going to put this Dulce papers. I'm going to put this in the chat, and I would suggest if you're interested in this stuff and you want to learn more, this is a good place to learn about it. And you can actually go. There's a whole bunch of different videos and stuff, and the case files. So I'm going to put this in the chat before we go. So if anybody wants to, Diddy's going to burn in hell. Yeah, they're all going to burn in hell. Sad, but it's true. But if you want to check out, there's a lot of different ones, and if you put the underground Dulce base and the papers, you can find so much. It's scary, but it's been going on forever. So,
look,
these
Joanne said the report's on edhq.org. Do you see the private chat, Jenny?
No, let me see if I can get that and put that into here. I'm gonna put that in here too. So people can go. It's really interesting, but I don't know if you should do it before you go to bed because I wouldn't want to. There's some stuff. It's just really scary. And you know what? They think they can. I still think they can they can use your mind and through telepathy, and they can really screw with you. So I think there's a lot of weird stuff out there. But
I agree.
Well. Okay, so thank you so everybody for coming. I wish everybody would start to come in sooner. It seems like, horror films before you go to bed is not a good idea. Don't do that, Nicole. Don't do that. And so I want to thank Smart Labels for sponsoring this episode too, and all our episodes.
Absolutely, Smart Labels, love you. Great company. Of course, very practical company too, Jenny. Very practical.
I know. I'm going to get some here. I have it right here just to show you guys. I am going to start using it because I'm packing up all my pool supplies and I have to know where they are.
Yeah, look at that.
So you download the Smart Labels app. It's available on Apple and Android. Label the box. Each label has a unique identifier and color to help you organize your boxes, and scan the label in the app and give each box a name, location, destination, description, as well as what's inside the box. So it's easy. You just have this QR code. But I'm going to be I'm definitely going to use it to store put my pool to sleep October 10th, 11. I'm sad.
Come on. See, Jenny, Joe said it's not your fault. It's just work.
Yeah, it's just work. Joe, where have you been all my life?
Well, Joe and everyone else can also catch us on Spreaker or their favorite podcast app the next day.
And Alexa.
And Alexa.
Yeah, you just have to enable skills and you can say, Alexa, please play Oracle Talk Radio Network. And she'll play. Yeah.
Alexa, what the hell they say?
She's here. She's talking to me now. Oh, there she's starting to play it. Okay, well, it was great to have you all here, and we'll see you again next week. You can see me every morning for Good Morning Jesus, Pages of Faith at 10:30, and you can see me on In the Know on Wednesdays at 11 Eastern, and Tom on Beyond the Radar. What's your time now, Tom?
Radar? 8 o'clock Wednesdays.
8 o'clock Wednesdays. There you go. And we'll see you later, everybody. Have a great evening. Have a great weekend, and don't be scared to go to sleep tonight.